Instagram. This is Dr. Marie Thuen. I'm the author of What is Compersion? Understanding Positive Empathy in Consensually Non-Monogamous Relationships. Today I'm going to be joined by the one and only Evita Sawyers, and we're going to talk about what is a compersion ethic. Usually when we talk about compersion, we think about the emotion of compersion, the shared joy, the empathetic happiness that we might feel when our partners are happy with someone else. But it is so much more than that, and I'm super excited to talk with Evita about this when I interviewed her. So I'm going to bring her in for a conversation about what is a compersion ethic and how do we cultivate it. Hello.
Hi. Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me well enough?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. It's nice to talk to you again. The last conversation we had was so great.
Oh my gosh, yes, about erotic jealousy.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm about to post that actually, so I'm super excited for folks to be able to watch
Yeah, I'm
that.
excited too. Yeah, it was a great conversation. I learned some things about myself and just that exploration that I really appreciate it.
Oh, every time we talk, I feel like it just creates little like thought babies.
Yeah, yeah. That's so true.
Yeah, and just from the first time I reached out to you for my book, actually, I wanted to
Which
explore
is
different.
phenomenal, by the way. I've been like reading and diving into it, and oh my goodness, I'm like, this is such a great resource. I love the tone. It's so fascinating. Yeah, it's a great book. So pick up What is Compersion. I'm telling y'all, it's a great book.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And it's filled with Evita Sawyer's wisdom. Actually, I was thinking I could start with reading a little quote that I think is going to frame the conversation
Sure.
that we're about to have about a compersion ethic. And it is in chapter 4, and it's a section that's titled, Is Compersion Necessary? And, people ask me that all the time. They're like, well, like, I don't want to feel like I'm obligated to feel compersion to be a good polyamorous person. And really, I think the answer is in the nuance of what we mean when we talk about compersion. Do we mean
Right.
compersion, the emotion, or compersion, the attitude or the orientation, or the concept that we developed together in conversation, the idea of a compersion ethic? And I think
Hmm.
that's a lot more important. So, okay, I'm just going to read this little quote here. Based on my research and experience as a relationship coach, it seems that embodied compersion is an enjoyable and fortunate experience when it arises, but not a prerequisite for harmonious, consensually non-monogamous partnerships. However, partners adopting a compersive attitude is more fundamental. In other words, embracing an ethic of compersion, behaviorally and attitudinally, brings congruency and integrity to non-monogamy without being dependent on the ups and downs of one's emotions, moods, and changing relational dynamics. This was beautifully articulated by Evita Lavitaloca Sawyers. And then I quote you saying, I am practiced in choosing to align my thoughts and behaviors, even when my emotions may not be on board, with my polyamorous integrity, which is to be supportive and encouraging partner to my partners as they pursue relationships and connections that bring them fulfillment. So, yeah, I think in that quote, you just encapsulate like feelings and mood will change, but it doesn't mean I don't have to be bound to those moods. I can still act in integrity.
Right. And so I think that it is important that we talk about that and that we tell people that that's possible because I find that, especially in the beginning, when non monogamy is so uncomfortable, unless you just one of those people that, God bless you, you just were like wired to monogamy and like it's non monogamy. As soon as you came in, it just like clicked. You didn't have any, it wasn't really challenging for you to grasp emotionally. Um, and I always say, I hate those people, fuck those people, because that was not my experience at all. But in the beginning, specifically, when non-monogamy is so uncomfortable, I think people look to compersion as like, oh, if I can get to the space to where I feel compersion, then I'll be able to align my actions with like the things that I want to do. And so they're like waiting for this magical feelings experience for them to be able to be like, I'll be able to stop being cold with my partner, or I'll be able to stop being passive aggressive because I'll feel good about it. And then because I feel good about it, then I'll make these behavioral choices that reflect that I feel good about it.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, when I first got into non-monogamy and I saw everybody talking about compersion, I was like, oh my God, I got to figure out how to feel this feeling. And so I tried to fake it till I make it, or, I just couldn't understand it. I felt very broken because I couldn't experience it. And so then I was like, okay, to me, it's just a very lofty goal to imagine that you're going to have lived this life where you're constantly being imprinted on by monogamy, and monogamy saying that you should feel badly about your partner interacting with someone else, to think that you're going to go from that to feeling good and feeling positive about it with just a decision to become polyamorous. Like, no, there's a whole lot of space in between to cover. And so I set my sights on neutrality, which is what I love that you talk about in the book, is benevolent neutrality, to where I was like, let me just get to neutral. So I
Hmm.
don't feel bad or good about it. It just is.
Yeah.
Um, and once I was able to kind of get myself to that space, then it was a lot easier, for me to like kind of go, okay, well, what actions, do I want to, incorporate in like how I show up to my partners interacting this way. So like I
Hmm.
said, I don't want to be passive aggressive. If I have a issue, I want to name it. I want them to know that while this thing that you're doing makes me uncomfortable, I still support your doing it. So I still support your autonomy in doing it.
Yeah.
And then after a while, I was like, well, maybe I can move the needle to like actually feeling positively about it. But it was a progression. It wasn't like this thing that just magically happened. And I also found that I was still able to behave as a supportive partner, even when sometimes my feelings weren't always on board. I was still able to choose actions that aligned with like who I wanted to be to my partners and what I overall wanted to communicate to them about their non-monogamy, which is that even in times when this makes me uncomfortable or I'm struggling with some aspects of it, it doesn't supersede the understanding that I have and the commitment that I've made to you to support you fulfilling your life in this way.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And, as we were talking about in our Instagram post, like it doesn't require toxic positivity. It doesn't require
No,
like being fake and being like, oh, honey, I'm so happy for you, but like, oh, you're like raging inside. So, but I'm
which I
curious,
had
like,
plenty of those moments. Okay.
but do you think there's any value in the fake it till you make it advice?
Is there any value in the fake it till you make it advice? Some people can find merit in that. So I'm not one of those like panacea people. I don't know if I pronounced it properly, to where there's just
Yeah.
like, one thing. Everybody's medicine is different.
Mm, mm,
And so for some people, that tactic does work for them. It's like, okay, if I put on a smile, if I imagine myself being this person and I play this role,
mm,
eventually like I'll, kind of step into it. And so I do think that there is some merit to that, you know. But I think that there is a fine line with faking it till you make it and gaslighting yourself.
right, right.
So, and when it veers into the territory where you're gaslighting yourself, excuse me, and you're not like honoring your uncomfortable feelings, you're just like putting a smiley face sticker on them. And you're not really addressing them. One of the things that, you're not doing is you're not listening to their messages and their signals, because our uncomfortable emotions are not just, us being salty about our partners being with somebody else. Like sometimes they have some pretty valuable information on
Yeah.
like, hey, there are certain aspects of this situation or certain aspects of this experience or like this relationship or the way this person is showing up to you that is creating an obstacle
Mm-hmm.
for you to be compersive about this, because like you said, compersion is contextual. And
Yeah.
so do I have the right environment to have the most optimal opportunity for me
Mm,
to experience compersion. Whether or not I experience it or not, is the environment the most optimal for it to exist? And if it's not, then there are probably some things that you need to be addressed. But if you just do this fake it till you make it, well, I just put a smiley face on everything, you're
yeah.
probably not sitting with those uncomfortable feelings and going, what message am I like, it's trying to, are these feelings trying to get across?
Totally. Yeah, when I work with people, I like to use the word bottleneck. Like, let's find out what the bottleneck is in the ecosystem of your relationships, like whether it's
Right.
within yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you're talking to yourself, your scripts, your beliefs, your inherited beliefs, all of that. Or if it's in a relationship, maybe there isn't as much reassurance or connection or real authentic truth, like going into that ecosystem, and there's a sense of like, oof, like, is there secrecy, is there withholding, or is there a scarcity of love and attention and actual desire that's happening there? Or sometimes the bottleneck can also be at the community level. It can be like, maybe like, okay, I feel pretty good, but my only support system is my partner, and when I have a hard time, I don't know who else to turn to with my issues. Everyone else is kind of an mononormative mindset and is going to tell me like, well, you're having problems because you're not monogamous, and that's not supportive.
Right, or even like on a systemic level, something
Yeah.
that I talk about, if you are a disabled partner and you have an able-bodied partner who, is involved in some level of your caretaking, and, they're engaging in non-monogamy, that relationship is going to feel significantly more threatening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it could be something, something outside of that. But either way, those uncomfortable feelings, they have messages. They're not just there to ruin your life, like, and I think like in the beginning, that's the way you feel, like you're just ruining, my non-monogamy, and that's what you think those feelings are doing. It's like, you're just making it horrible, you're here to ruin all my relationships and, rain on my non-monogamous parade, and I'm supposed to be enjoying this. And you learn, through polyamorous maturity, it's like, oh, they have messages. Sometimes that message, I tell the people, sometimes that message is, I have more work to do on validating myself. I have more work to do on developing a more secure attachment style. Sometimes the message is, my blood sugar is low and I haven't had lunch. I mean, it really is just a variety of things. But they're not just there to just rain on your non-monogamous parade. They have information. They do. And I think when we do that toxic positivity sort of, you have to feel compersion all the time and you try to fake it till you make it. Often you're not receiving those messages, and then you're not being fixing the things that they're trying to alert you to, which just creates bigger problems down the road.
Totally. And also, the fake it till you make it almost implies that there is one unique way to be authentic versus like, hey, we have so many parts, like there might be a part of me that wants to be supportive and that really is. And then there's a part of me that wants to throw a tantrum. And there's a part of me that just wants to repress the whole thing because I want to be a good person and not have any messy emotions. It's like, okay, what radio station are you going to tune into inside of yourself? Like, can you honor all the parts and also then have more agency in how you show up?
Right. It posits that there's one right way to feel
Right.
about our partner's non-monogamy, when there are a myriad of ways to feel about our partner's non-monogamy, and you can feel all those things sometimes simultaneously. I've had moments when I've been very compersive for my partners, and then also felt deep jealousy or envy about a particular aspect of the situation
Yeah.
that pinged on those things, and you can hold those emotions at the same time. But I think when we have this fake it till you make it idea about compersion, the underlying current of that is, there is one right way to feel. There's
Mm.
one right way to feel about non-monogamy, about my partner's non-monogamy, and it's positive all the time. And the reality is, that's just not possible. And not only is that just not possible, because, okay, obviously there's a situation, say your partner has canceled the last 5 dates on you for this new person that they're going to, and like they're taking your birthday weekend and going away for a weekend with this person.
Hmm.
If you told me you felt compersion about that, I'd be like, but
I don't know.
like, are you Jesus? Because outside of that context, I don't really understand, why anybody would feel compersion about that. And so that's a situation where you can look at clearly and go, It is completely appropriate for you to not be experiencing compersion about this situation.
Mhm.
But then there will be situations where all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, and, everything checks out. Your partner hasn't done anything wrong. Your metahammer hasn't done anything wrong, and you're still feeling it.
Yeah.
And those are the situations where it's harder to sort of embrace authenticity of emotion because
Mhm.
you're like everything is in place to where I should be feeling positive about this and I just don't. Guess what? That's okay. And
Mhm.
that does not mean that you still can't operate in your values, in your ethics.
Mhm.
Just to say, I'm not feeling this emotionally, I am just struggling with this. And also, my partner is not in the wrong, my metamor is not in the wrong, the situation is above board. And what are a set of actions that I can choose that demonstrate my understanding and my awareness of this, while also honoring my authentic feelings? Like, it is possible to do both.
Right.
And so that for me was like the linchpin to me being able to have a better experience in non-monogamy, because I wasn't doing this like waffling between trying to figure out, trying to flagellate myself, to feeling better about it. And I wasn't going, well, I just don't feel, good about this. And so all bets are off, or how I respond. I was able to kind of find a way that allowed me to honor my authentic feelings and also help me to still feel empowered, that I could show up in a way that I could look back on and be proud of myself for.
Right. Can you give us some examples of like how a compersion ethic looks like? Like maybe like in a situation where things are not really like above board, or like your partner canceled on you 5 times in a row and it's just really kind of a crappy situation, versus also like if it is a situation where everything is fine but you're just feeling devastated or angry and you're feeling all these emotions but you're trying to show up with that ethic.
Yeah, so in a situation where a person is behaving in such a way that is not ideal, they're violating some agreement. Like I said, they're not prioritizing, our relationship, and sort of being, cavalier with it
Mm-hmm.
for someone else. Those situations are challenging because usually the experience that you feel is you might be feeling indignation, at least I do. I get mad. Other people, they respond differently, but I get angry. Or you might be imploding, why is my partner treating this way? You're feeling sad.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, in those situations, to me, what an ethic of compersion looks like is, number one, I'm never going to control somebody's behavior if I can avoid it.
Mm, yep.
So I'm never going to say to you, you can't go out with that person. You can't go in here. You can't talk to them on the phone. Whatever, those kinds of
Yep.
things. It's not stuff that I'm going to say.
Yep.
Nor do I necessarily respond to those by going, if you go out on that date, I'm going to break up with you. That's usually not a way that I respond to those situations as well.
Yeah, like no threats.
No threats. Yeah, no threats. If I'm going to make a choice to end a relationship based on the way that you've been behaving, that's a decision that I'm going to sit with myself about, and I'm going to kind of evaluate what's going on. I'm going to evaluate however many efforts I may have tried to work with this person to see if they could fix this behavior, or if I'm even willing to do that. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, do I really want to do that? Or and do I kind of want to go, this person not seeing something wrong with canceling on me 5 times just lets me know that we're not compatible. That relationship needs to end. But
Yeah.
I'm definitely not going to attempt to control the person. I'm not going to make any threats. So
Mm-hmm.
in that circumstance, I'd be like, all right, you're canceling our date for the fifth time. I'm letting you know that you canceled our date for the fifth time. You're free to do what you want to do, but I'm requesting, that we have a conversation about this relationship and kind of check in and make sure that, we still want to be together. Because you're not communicating that with your actions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just going to sit around and just act like it's okay for you to do this to me. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I would handle it in that situation. Like I said, I wouldn't, make the person say you're wrong, for going out with this person. This is, what you want to do. You're showing me what you want to do. And also, I need to address, how it's hurting me. In a situation where, like everything is above board and nobody's really done anything, usually those situations, the ethic of compersion for me is having compassion for myself, really, is
Mm-hmm.
where an ethic of compersion is for me. In that moment, is having compassion for myself, and being able to hold that, sometimes, even when, like I said, we set up everything for success, I'm just not able or capable, or to be there. And so that's when that compassion piece comes in. And then also an ethic of compersion for me looks like honesty. So it looks like going to my partner and being like, you didn't do anything wrong. Everything is above board. I'm still in support of you, choosing things that are fulfilling for you. But I just have to name and hold that my feelings are just not there. You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling uncomfortable. I'm feeling challenged about this. If I need any kind of reassurance, I ask for that reassurance. If I need to kind of sit with myself and go, is there some deeper work that I'm becoming aware of through this circumstance that maybe I just didn't have a finger on before that happened, then I'll do that. But it really starts with compassion, and not being upset with myself. Because I feel like what happens in those moments is then we start to get down on ourselves. You
Mm-hmm.
should be able to feel this. Why are you acting like this? Everything's fine, and you start doing that. And so I've had to learn that part of my ethic compersion is having compassion for myself when I don't experience it, or when it's just not there, when it's not present. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Yeah, because if you don't actually like embrace your entire wholeness, then it's probably going to come out sideways.
Yeah. Sometimes compersion for me is, like I said, just my being able to say thank you for sharing. Thank you for honoring our agreement of transparency. And that is all I have. That is all I have in me. Thank you for telling me. Right? And that's all I got. But I honor that, because to me, that is being compersive. That is being supportive. That is saying, hey, I'm not stopping you. You're free to do what you want, and I want you to do what you want. But I also want to be able to be an authentic and whole human being in this experience, and not some, like automaton. I'm just so happy, so happy, so happy, so happy every time. No, like, no.
Oh my gosh, I love your skits that you've been putting out, on Instagram. Like it's so awesome. So yeah, like I feel like this is becoming like this manifesto. I'm writing what you like you said, like no controlling, no threats, no blame, like not blaming your partner, having compersion for yourself, and honesty. Like it's the beginning of a really great like list of like what is a compersion ethic.
Right, right, right. Yeah. So honesty, the golden rule to me is, a compersion ethic as well. So it's like, if I was, being able to zoom out and go, if I was in my partner's shoes in this moment, what would I want? How
Mm,
would I want them to be showing up to me? What would I want them to say? And for me, what I want actually, when I think about that question, is I want my partners to be, one of the first things I want them to be is honest with me. I don't want my partners to fake it till they make it with me. So I don't do that with them.
mhm,
So I don't want my partners to be like, oh my God, I hope you have such a great time. And that's not true for them. I really don't want them to do that. I want them to say to me, Vita, I'm kind of struggling with this a little bit, and I have some challenging emotions about this, but, I do hope you have a good time. Text me when you get back.
mhm.
That's kind of what I want. So I'm like, what would I want from my partner in this moment? What would feel supportive for me? I also think an ethic of compersion is about talking with your partners and
Yeah.
going, what is
Mm,
most meaningful for you
mm,
about, how I can support you? And not necessarily doing that from a space of wanting to promise or guarantee that, but more that you have an idea of what matters, to
mhm.
your partners about what's supportive. Because I would sometimes, my partners would share things with me that they did, in order to be supportive, quote unquote. And they were stuff that I did not care about. Like, and I'd be like, but this other thing that I like really is important to me,
Mhm.
this thing, I
Right.
would actually really like it if you could do that,
Yeah.
But there's a really great quote that's attributed to Anais Nin that goes, "We don't see things as they are; we see things as we are." You know, and
Mhm.
I've adapted it to go, "We don't give people what they want; we give people what we want."
Right. Right.
Usually, the first thing that we do is we give people what we want,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
instead of going, "Hey, what about this feels most fulfilling for you or most satisfying for you? You know, what support could I show you that would help you to feel really good, to help me feel like I really was really supportive of you?"
Yep.
You
Yeah.
know, we're
It's
often
like
giving
the
people
love.
what we want. Huh?
Yeah, it's a little bit like the love languages, right? Like, oh, like I want words of affirmation, so I'm gonna give that to my partner. But what they really want is for me to cook them a meal.
Right, exactly. Or like I want my I would have partners that, they would express a lot of like excitement. "Oh my God, I'm so happy for you. You're going on a date." Ah! I don't need that. It's
Mhm.
nice, thanks. Like I don't need that.
Mhm.
What I do need, okay, that I sometimes wouldn't experience is I actually appreciate it more when they share with me their challenges, and so they would keep their challenges from me. I would have partners. I've
Mhm.
had that a lot, where I've
Yeah,
actually had partners that kept their discomforts from me because that's what they wanted.
they wanted, yeah, you to keep your discomfort from
They
them.
wanted me to like keep my discomforts in, not share them, take them someplace else. That's what they wanted, and so they would do that with me. And I didn't like that actually. I wanted them to share their discomforts with me. That actually helped me feel supported by them, because I'm not a person that feels burdened,
Mm-hmm.
by my partners sharing their sensitivities with me. Like I welcome those things because it informs how I move as I'm engaging in my non-monogamy, because I know what their sticky areas are. So I like that information.
Yeah.
I want you to share that with me. But for them, they thought that it was being supported by not telling me those things.
Mm.
And so I think it's important that we're checking in with our partners to go, what feels supportive for you? What feels, like something that you would want me to be able to show up to? Now, you may or may not be able to provide it, but at least you know what they're looking for. And you're kind of not going, well, I'm just going to give them what I like, because that may not be what they like.
Yeah. So I feel like what you're saying is that compersion is a collaborative project. It's not just
Yes.
like an inside job.
Yeah, it's not. It's very much a collaborative project with your partner. So I even tell people, when they are wanting to work on increasing their compersion or increasing their capacity for compersion, that you should communicate that to your partner,
Mm.
and say, "Hey, I'm moving into a period where I'm going to try to develop this muscle," so that you're letting them in, you're keying them in.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is usually they get, and I noticed this in one of my relationships, I like went into an intentional period of like wanting to increase my capacity for compersion, but I didn't really share that with my partner. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and we had been together for several years. So he was kind of used to me being kind of information light, not really engaging him a ton on his other relationships. Like that was our, the kind of rut that we were in. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I just started changing and started asking for more information or wanting to communicate more about his other connections, he first met that with a lot of resistance. It was suspicion.
Oh.
It was very like, because he wasn't used to that about me. And so like a few attempts that I had at like trying to like engage him more openly about his other relationships, they fell a little flat. They did. And I think it was because he was kind of like
What's
because
going
he didn't
on?
know that I was sort of embarking on this process of like wanting to increase my capacity. So I always tell people, like, when you're making some relationship changes, you should
Mm-hmm.
tell people that you're in relationship with, "Hey, I'm going to be working on this. I noticed that I want to increase this. Here's how you can support me in doing that. Here are some things that'll be really helpful. Here are
Yeah.
some things that are not helpful. So don't throw it in my face. Like if I don't, if I fall short or whatever, or gently call me in if you see me, reverting to some old behaviors." But I think that that's something that you should be sharing with partners. And so, yeah, compersion to me is definitely very collaborative. It's like, what conditions can we contribute to with one another so that we have the most optimal environment for both of us to be able to engage with each other in this way? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's so cool. I get people oftentimes coming to coaching and they're like, I know that this is all my problem, this is all my work, my partner is not doing anything wrong, and I need to figure out how to feel conversion. And it's like, well, that's really at some level, like it's great to have someone coming and saying like, well, my partner is doing everything right. So that's a good start. But often that can betray like a sense of almost like an orientation to the world of like, I need to do everything myself and
Right.
people will not have my back. And I don't want to burden other people because that threatens my love or that threatens, the love that I might receive.
Right. I think that there's a difference between like our partners like doing everything right,
Mhm.
or like there's like a baseline, and then there's also like, are there some areas where adjustments can be made so that they can support you.
Yeah.
And they may not be able to do all of them, but they can do some of those things. So to me, if a partner came to me and was like, you're doing everything right, you're honoring our agreements, et cetera, so forth and so on, but I'm still experiencing some compersion. Here is something that you can do that could help me along. I'd be like, oh my God, thank you so much. Because,
Hmm.
it's important for me to not be making it unduly difficult on my partner if there are things that I can do that aren't restrictive to me, that aren't like I said, feel like this like majorly challenge. There are small actions that I can provide that can just make it a little bit easier for them. I like to be able to do that, and I like to have that information. I also think that people that are like that, I can be like that sometimes. They're like one of those people that they're like they have to like white knuckle it through life, and so they take on a lot of the responsibility, of navigating their emotions. And I often find that those people are probably people that also like struggle for help, struggle asking for help. They're usually those kinds of people that they don't, like you said, I don't want to burden someone and whatever,
Hmm.
and so they struggle with asking for help,
Yeah.
because they feel like it's a burden and they feel like it's too much, to ask their partner to like just make it a little bit easier on me. I'm not saying you need to completely change a whole program, but
Hmm.
if you could make a few small adjustments to make it a little bit easier on me, like to me, like why would you not want to do that if you love somebody? Why would you not want to make things a little bit easier on them? If you can.
Absolutely. You said something about like building your muscle or building your capacity for compersion. And I know you talk about that in your new workbook, and I'm super excited to hear about like what does that mean for you, like building that extra capacity for compersion.
So to me, building the capacity for compersion is number one, defining what it is for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then identifying whatever obstacles you have, in your pathway to to it, the capacity for it or to experiencing it.
Yeah.
And then if you identify those obstacles, doing the work to kind of clear them. Because one of the things that I say is if you have a racetrack, for example, or you're, running a marathon, you're going to clear the road. Now, does clearing the road mean that you're going to cross the finish line? No. No, it's not a guarantee,
Yep.
that
You're
you're going to cross the
preparing.
finish line. But
Yep.
what it will do is it will make the path, make it a little bit easier, for you to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's identifying what obstacles you have to compersion, internal, external, and then, outside of the relationship. So internal, external usually have to do with your partner, and then systemic, just the things that nobody really can control.
Yeah.
And then, kind of creating what I call like a roadmap to compersion. I see compersion as more like a direction to orient yourself towards, and not like this destination that you just arrive at. I don't see it that way. I see it like as something that you always kind of choose to direct your compass towards, is the way I kind of look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like what actions are on my like roadmap that are demonstrations of me orienting my compass, back towards that direction, that true north. To me, comparison is like a true north. What actions am I choosing? And so to me, just developing the capacity is sort of addressing, like I said, having what your internal value system is, what your definition of it, like what your compass is, what your true north is for compersion.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with whatever obstacles that you identify, that keep you from steering yourself towards that way, or like I said, running on that pathway.
Mm-hmm.
And then like creating almost like a plan of action, for you, having things that you can reach for, these are actions that I can reach for, that signify to myself and signify to others that I'm orienting my compass, towards compersion. So some of that is going to be, what is my self-talk?
Mm-hmm.
How am I talking to myself? How am I building myself up? How am I validating myself? Some of that is going to be outside. How am I addressing issues in my relationships? How am I setting boundaries? How am I choosing good partners?
That's
Like
a big one.
that is
Yeah.
a huge one. Partner choice. Partner choice is an absolute huge one because people are like, why am I not? When my marriage ended,
Mm-hmm.
and I found myself in other relationships where compersion was just a lot easier. I was like, oh, like I could experience this. I
Yeah.
was just with the wrong person, for me to be able to have that capacity, for
Mm-hmm.
me to experience compersion. And so partner choice is huge. And so it's like, how am I addressing things in my relationship? How am I addressing the choices that I'm making of the people to be with? How am I addressing the boundaries that I'm setting? So that I can increase my capacity for compersion. And then I feel like with systemic things, like I said, those are things that are like nobody really can control. Like, how am I moving towards acceptance, of
Mm-hmm.
some of those things? And then also, how am I like acknowledging what exists in the macro and then interfacing with the people that I'm in relationships with so that we're mitigating like how that's having an impact on how we're relating to one another to the best of our ability. We can't completely erase it,
Mm-hmm.
but we can acknowledge it, and set up, things that we can do to mitigate the impacts of those things in our individual sort of microcosm of the macrocosm.
Right, right. And that actually reminds me of the conversation we had also about like how does being part of a marginalized group connect with compersion? Like, does it mean that it's harder? Does it mean, like what does it mean? And you talking about compersion as resistance, against forces of oppression that tell you like you should feel weaker. And what if, you still really choose a compersion ethic within that? It's like positive defiance.
Yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't not only want systems like white supremacy, colonialism, cis heteronormativity, classism, ableism to dictate my external actions. I also don't want it to dictate my internal feelings.
Right.
And so when to me, now compersion is about so much more, it's kind of about like resistance, so it's like, okay, I'm resisting these narratives that tell me that there's something wrong with my partner wanting other people or desiring someone else. There's something wrong with them. There's something wrong with me. I
Mm-hmm.
also think that compersion work is decentering work, because, and actually it's so funny that this came up because, I had like my first experience of jealousy with my daughter
Oh.
yesterday. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I mean, I've experienced jealousy with my children before, but this is my first experience experiencing jealousy with my daughters, or my kids in general, since I came back to California, because I just moved back to California in November.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter was on the phone with one of her cousin's parents. And she has cousins that are her same age and they're really, really close. So she
Mm-hmm.
goes over to their house a lot, and she's also close to the mom. And they were on the phone, and the mom was talking to her. And my daughter is like a wonderful human being. She's so sweet. Like everybody loves her. Everybody loves to be around her. She's just a delight. She's just a joy. She really is. And so they were talking to my daughter, and they were like making some plans to like go to the gym. And me and my daughter have been going to the gym
Mm-hmm.
4 times a week, for the last couple of weeks. And so it's kind of like our little time. And
Nice.
so I could overhear my daughter talking about going to the gym, with her cousin's mom, her aunt. And ooh, I felt this internal snarl. I mean, like it was so visceral. It was like it was like like a snarl, like in territorial.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I'm well practiced enough in like noticing this emotion and witnessing it come up that I didn't react. I didn't, withdraw from her or get snippy or or say, I just sat there and I was just like, ooh, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really resonant for me. And I was like, oh, and so it like brought all these things to me about what I was feeling in my relationship with my children. But one of the things that I had to do was I kind of had to decenter myself and go, I'm not supposed to be the sole source of joy, the sole source of wisdom, the sole source of love for my kids.
Yeah.
And in a mom role, that's hard. That's a hard thing to embrace.
Mm.
But to me, compersion work is decentering work. It's going, I don't have to be the center of this person's universe.
Oh my gosh.
They get to have significance that does not, have anything to do with me. They get to have joy that isn't, that I'm not the source of. They get to experience pleasure with others, and I can just support, their right to do that. And embrace that, and even celebrate that, because that is them leading a full and rich life, and like I said, not feeling like I needed to be at the center of it. I need to be their sole source of everything. And I'm very much like a Whitney Houston. I'm every woman. It's all of me. Ain't no mountain high enough. You want it, I got it. Like, I'm very like that in relationships. I'm like, I want to be your everything. I do. I really do.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's learning how to decenter myself over and over and over again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and like it's kind of like releasing that grip. It's so hard and it's so painful and it can be so liberating at the same time. Like, oh God, like you're releasing yourself as well as the other person.
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
process of like, oh, that's scary.
Yeah, and decentering work, I feel, is so important for the time that we're in, because we're having to hear the experiences of so many different communities, and having to decenter ourselves in that work, and especially around discomfort. You know,
Hmm.
how this person is existing is making me uncomfortable.
Hmm.
you know, so
Hmm.
much of that is our experience as marginalized people, interacting with oppressive classes of any variety. Literally, I am just existing. I'm
Hmm.
pursuing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that makes you uncomfortable. Sit with that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Sit with that. Sit with that, because most of the time, the oppressed class, their response is, your existence is making me uncomfortable, and now that's your problem. That's something that you have to stop pursuing your happiness. You have to stop pursuing your thriving, whatever, because it makes me uncomfortable.
Right.
So learning how to embrace an ethic of compersion is learning how to sit with decentering yourself and going, another person's existence
Hmm.
making me uncomfortable does not mean that now it's their problem, that they have to do something about it. I have to limit them. I have to control them. I have to restrict them. If anything, I need to sit with myself and go, why is this person just existing
Hmm.
and pursuing their happiness causing me to feel away? What's going on?
Oh my gosh, literally. Yeah, it is so perfectly said. It's like, imagining compression in a non-monogamous ecosystem is a microcosm of what we need to do at a global scale.
Very much so. Very much so. It's learning how to embrace that, as many of the human populace should have access to joy, should have access to pleasure, should have access to resources, should have access to thriving, um and so yeah, and so it's really on a more global scale, like learning how to hold that, we are not the center of the universe, for our loved ones, and spanning that out, we're not the center of the universe to the people around us.
Mm.
To me, it's very, very important work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if people could do it in their personal relationships, like the world would be such a different place, I think.
Right.
When you think about like why do we live in such an oppressive society and how does that translate in people's bedrooms, people's living rooms, people relationships with their, spouses and children and all of that. Like it's so, it's like it's a mirror.
Yeah, it's that scarcity, that there's only so many resources, there's only so much joy to go around, and so it has to be hoarded. And if you see somebody else with it, then either you have to be the supplier of it, or you have to like take it away from them and take it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, and learning how to embrace that we live in an abundant world. There's an abundant opportunity for love. There's an abundant opportunity for pleasure. One person's love and pleasure doesn't diminish or take your own. One person sharing in love and pleasure in someone else does not take away from them being able to share in love and pleasure with you. And you know, kind of just embracing that there's joy to be had all around. A friend of mine just made a really good quote about, like, basically saying something to the effect of, like, any love that she experiences or witnesses is her love, you know. So even to watch you share someone she loves, share love with someone else, that's still love for her, you know, that's still love for her because she got to witness it. She got to experience it, even if it's through someone else or it's not connected to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're more practiced in, like, doing that in our, like, friend groups. We're more practiced in doing that in our family spaces. You know, we're just not as practiced in doing that in our, you know, romantic and sexual context because, you know, we live in a largely monogamous society. But you know, if you can celebrate for a friend when they, you know, get a new job or when they had a really good time with another friend, you know, you can do that same thing, you know, with your partners. You can learn, you know, how to cultivate, you know, that same experience with your partners.
Totally, totally. And I feel like so much of it comes back to being able to tap into our own source and being able to have compersion and celebration for ourselves and not being in that paradigm where most of us have been raised to think like our validation comes from someone else and someone else choosing us exclusively.
Right. Yeah. So find that the hardest, you know, experiences I have is when, like I said, holding the both ends, you know, that I am happy for my partner. I do want them to have joy, and also I'm envious because we're long distance and I don't get to go on a date with them. You know, I only go on a date with them every few months.
Yeah.
Or I'm envious because, you know, they have another partner and I don't, you know, and so I'm not getting to have these other experiences or my romantic cup isn't full. I always tell people that you know, jealousy reveals to me the ways that I don't like myself. Envy reveals to me the way that I don't like my life.
Mm,
And
mm, mm.
that's like kind of my shorthand,
Yeah.
you know? And so when I find myself experiencing either of those emotions, usually that's a signal for me. Oh, if it's envy, there's something about my life that I don't like. And if it's jealousy, there's something about myself, you know, that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how I'm, you know, able to kind of pinpoint, you know, like kind of what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I find that sometimes it's the hardest, you know, when like I said, I'm like, I want my partner. I'm kind of in that space now with a former partner. You know, we're sort of moving through remaining connected to one another. And so like, I had this like whole thing about like, what does compersion look like post breakup, you know? You
Yes.
know, now that I'm no longer like receiving certain, because it's easy to be like, okay, well, I'm going to have compersion because he's giving to me in these same ways, you know? And so, yeah, I'm going to have compersion, you know?
Mhm.
But what about, you know, when I'm not receiving those things anymore because we're in a different space, but I'm still, you know, being made privy to, you know, interactions and things that, you know, they're sharing with other people, you know, is my ethic of compersion still online, you know?
Yeah.
And so like, I feel like I'm going deeper now into like my compersion work and my ethic of compersion work because it's like it's real easy to choose that ethic when like the things are all the way I want them to be, you know. It's real easy to be like, oh my god, you know, my ethic of compersion. But you know, in the moments when it's not, you know, what does that ethic of compersion look like? You know, is it still there or am I like, ah, all bets are off, you know, because you're not giving me what I want anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's like a love ethic, right? Bell Hooks talks about love ethics in her books, and to me, that is so close to an ethic of compersion. It's like, can you treat people really well, even when your feelings are hurt, even when you're a little hungry, even when something tweaked you? Like, it's like sometimes it's easy to love people, and we think like, oh, I'm just such a loving person, I'm just so kind. And then it's like someone looks at you the wrong way. Oh, can you still love?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you have to take mistreatment, but like I think the capacity for compersion ultimately and the capacity to hold an ethic of compersion is the capacity to hold your heart open in the face of
Mm.
adversity and pain, no matter where it comes from.
Right. Yeah. It's to me it's the capacity to like I'm not going to prioritize like my comfort like over um like my holding you as a whole human being.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not going to prioritize my comfort. And if it becomes too difficult for me to hold both, then I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to reevaluate our relationship. I'm going to reevaluate your connection to me. Like, you know, I'm going to be willing to take those hard looks because I don't think that we should prioritize somebody's wholeness like completely over our comfort to where we are just in pain and totally uncomfortable. But we're holding on to this. I got to hold this person freely, you know, but we're like, you know, dying. No, like, you know what I mean? You know, it should be uncomfortable. I love what the poly kink therapist says. It should be uncomfortable. It shouldn't be painful. You know, he was like, uncomfortable, yes.
Mm.
You
Oh,
know, when
yeah.
you're in constant pain all the time, you
Mm.
know, that's something that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's important for me that my partners know that I'm not going to prioritize my comfort over holding you as a whole being.
Right.
You know, like I'm not going to do that. And I don't actually want to do that in any of my relationship spaces. So polyamory has showed me how important it is to do that with my children, you
Mm-hmm.
know, how important it is to do that with my friends,
Yeah.
how important it is to do that even with, you know, a stranger on the street, you know,
Mm-hmm.
is I'm not going to, you know, prioritize my comfort over your humanity.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's so beautiful. I just feel like we need to write a whole book about this.
Yeah, seriously.
Like,
So, because I think that people are in polyamory, you know, they're heartbroken because they're like, God, I just want to feel compersive and I don't understand. And I'm like you don't like I get it, you know, and I get that heartbreak as a person who once was like, why does I can't feel this? I can't feel this. You know, what's wrong with me? You know, but I'm like, honey, like, you know, you feel it, whether you feel it or not, you know, it'll come, you
mm,
know.
mm,
I remember my first genuine moment of just embodied compersion. I'll never forget it. It was my
mm,
ex-husband. And he had a partner that he had, and I really loved her. She was just such a gem. Like she and I are
mm,
still
mm,
in communication with one another. She's such a rad human being.
mm,
And they had been together, and it was their year anniversary.
mm.
And he was going to visit her, and I think I was on the phone with her or something. We were chit chatting, and I was driving, and I was like, "Oh, are you excited? He's coming up, you know, this is and that." We were talking about it. She was like, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, it's our year anniversary." She was like, "This is the first time I've ever celebrated a year with somebody."
Oh my gosh.
She was like, and she said, "You know, maybe I'm not broken after all."
Oh,
And
wow.
I broke down crying
Yeah. Yeah.
because, like I said, I loved her so much. She was such a wonderful person, and so for my partner to be able to provide that for her,
Mm.
it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful, such a beautiful moment for me to be able to share in, you know, to
Ah.
share in that, to share in her having that.
Mhm.
But like even now, 10 years later, you know, sometimes it comes, the feeling, sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. You
And it's
know?
interesting, that you felt it for the first time, that embodied compersion, like not towards your partner, but towards your metamor.
Yeah. I felt compersion for her. I
Yeah.
did. I felt compersion for her. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was happy, you know, for my, you know, partner to celebrate that with her, but it felt more poignant. I
Mm-hmm.
felt with her more,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, than I would feel with him because he didn't share a lot of that stuff, you know, with me. So he wasn't really, you know, he didn't give me a lot of those, you know, that just wasn't his bag. Plus, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I have to own that he didn't feel empowered to share about his relationships with me in any depth
Okay.
because we had had so much challenge in our relationship with me being
Yeah.
jealous and all of those things, and so it kind of created a fear in him for him
Mm-hmm.
to be able to share that with me. But she didn't have that fear, so she was able to share with me a little bit more freely. And so I was able to, and I actually find that when I feel compersion the most, when I actually feel it,
Mm-hmm.
it's usually because a partner was vulnerable with me about their relationship with another person in a way that I could like connect to. So I remember another time recently where I felt like embodied compersion. And the way I describe it is like it was almost like a breath, like I took a breath. My former partner had this person that they were seeing. and the relationship was a little confusing, and they were kind of hot and cold and in and out, and so they were kind of struggling with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like just checked in with them about it to see how it was going. And they had like a heart to heart with the person, and
Mm-hmm.
the person sort of explained like, why, they were engaging with them in that way. And it was able to like give my partner some clarity that I
Mm-hmm.
could tell help them to feel closer to the person, and sort of like remove some anxiety that they were going through and some hurt that they were feeling, about the relationship and how the person was showing up.
Yeah.
And when they shared that with me, I was like, oh wow, yeah, like I had this like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and I was
Mm-hmm.
really happy, that they had had that conversation. They cleared the air, because I know what that feels like when you're kind of you're angsty about something going on with somebody, and then you finally have a heart to heart, and you kind of clear the air, and it's like, oh, this person actually really does like me, but they were scared, and I was scared, and you know. I know what that feeling is like, and I know what it feels like when you kind of clear the air and stuff. And so I was like, oh, so I felt very compersion. So usually when I feel compersion is when someone like kind of gets real with me,
Mm-hmm.
about their relationship with someone else in a way that I can really get behind. But yeah, but the feeling comes. I never can predict when it's gonna happen.
Oh.
I
Mm.
really can't. The embodied sense. But my actions, I can. You know, I
Yeah.
can pretty much, sort of, with regularity, I can hit those targets most of the time. With
Mm-hmm.
regularity. So to me, you don't control your feelings. Feelings are, they come and go. They surprise us. They hit us unawares. Or sometimes we feel them, but we don't feel them to the depth that we thought, or we feel them, but there's another feeling overshadowing them. They're fickle. To me, feelings, emotions are fickle.
Mm-hmm.
But actions, thoughts, those are things that you can, to me, you can direct. You have more agency in that space. And so that's where I choose to just set my sights on, when it comes to compersion, is where do I have the most agency?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been reflecting on the phrase like the freedom to love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because love is not just an emotion, it's an action, it's a choice. It can be a whole thing that you do choose to do. And if we actually tap into the freedom and the agency we have to choose love in different moments where we would maybe not experience the emotion, like to me, that's the ultimate freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I often find that the people that are like naturally compersive, oh, I'm just naturally compersive. Love that for you. Also, when you
Mm-hmm.
inevitably, okay, hold on, inevitably
Yeah,
have an
we will.
experience where
Mm-hmm.
you do not naturally feel compersion, because trust me, you will.
Mm-hmm.
They usually fall into this like existential crisis, because they're like, oh my God, I don't understand. Something must be wrong. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with my partner. Somebody's doing something wrong, etc. Because they have this like existential crisis around not feeling compersion.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas people that sort of develop this ethic of compersion that is irrespective of whether or not they are feeling it or not, they're usually more able to show up, with the ebbs and flows of emotion, and still, like, like I said, hit the target of their values in terms of their actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, I'm so in love with you. I'm just so in love with our conversations, with these just thought collaborations. I always feel just like full and elevated every time we talk. I'm just like, I need to go write 10 more books. And, I need to go ask you to write more blogs for my site as well. Like, I'm just like, I wrote down a page of notes about every thread that I want to go further in. And I just want to thank you for being the person you are and sharing your wisdom and your heart so abundantly and so generously with the world. Like, especially lately, you've been just popping out so much amazing content. I'm just so, so, so grateful for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So I enjoy. I honestly, I'm just like, look, I was struggling, in the beginning, and man, like, so for me, it's like I want to be the voice that I needed.
Yeah.
I want to be the wisdom that I needed, when I was going through my difficult times. And so that's really what's most important to me is, let's be human. Let's humanize each other in this. And it
Mhm.
can be done. Let's support each other. Let's grow together. And so yeah,
It's
but
so good.
I love when we talk because, like I said, same thing. My brain starts firing. I get all the neurons. So thank you for suggesting that we do this live because always a great time talking to you.
Yes, I look forward to more. And do you want to tell folks about your workbook?
Oh, it's kind of yeah. So on my bio, if you go to my link in my bio, I have cultivating compersion module 1 and module 2. I'll be releasing module 3 soon. I'm in the process of moving, and so I'm like focusing on that right now. And then once I get the move done, but yeah, but it's a workbook where it has compersion mapping exercises, it has journal prompts. And it's just to get you thinking about your relationship to compersion. And like I said, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you're at. So the first book is just about, first 2 modules are just about figuring out where you're at in terms of compersion. So like what it is, what your personal definition is, and then like I said, what obstacles do you have? And then the next couple of modules are like, where are you going? Where do you want to go? So
Mm-hmm.
how do we get you to where you want to go? And I'm grateful, and it came from really my own work in cultivating an ethic of compersion and realizing that that's what I was doing. And then I was like, oh, I would love to be able to help people do this because I think there are so many people that are just bereft about their non-monogamous experience because they don't feel compersion. And so they feel like they're just doomed to a life of, non-monogamy being taxing and grueling. And that was me. Like, I was like, I really want to live this way. And I'm having such a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was because I was expecting myself to be a certain way or do a certain thing instead of like working with myself and where I was at and seeing it as like I said, an orientation, a way to point my compass and not as like something that I either had or I didn't, or something that I could either figure out how to be or I couldn't.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, that is coming from direct experience. So I just encourage everyone to go get those workbooks. And thank you for putting that into the world. And I'm so, again, so happy that we're collaborating.
Yeah, me too. Anyways, I have to go,
All
but
right.
this was a great conversation. Thank you for everybody that joined. It was great having you here, and yeah, well, I'm sure we'll talk again soon, Marie.
Okay, sounds good. Bye.
Bye.